busy. I mean, they're all in. You learn too, you know?
Hey, everyone, we're about to get started. If we can silence our cell phones. And if you would be so kind just to shut the back door for me, I greatly appreciate that. Thank you. And the side doors too, because they're going to be working downstairs. We don't want to be disturbed.
Yeah, I just got a copy.
Okay, good morning, everyone. We are on the record. Today is Wednesday, the 29th day of November in the year 2023. This is a budget hearing for the Office of the Tax Assessor with the Jersey City Municipal Council. We had a scheduled 11 a.m. start. The clock on my cell phone is showing 11:06 a.m. May we have a roll call for the commencement of this budget hearing? And I see we have Councilperson Prinzary.
Here.
Councilperson Baggiano.
Yeah.
And Council President Waterman.
Here.
So we have 3 council members in attendance at 11:06 a.m. In addition, at its time of its preparation, notice of this meeting was similarly disseminated on Thursday, November 16th, 2023 at 11:50 a.m. And a reminder was sent out on Wednesday, November 22nd, 2023 at 7:10 p.m. to the Mayor, Municipal Council, Business Administrator Corporation Council, and the local newspapers, so I can certify as to our total compliance with the Sunshine Law. Council President, I'm going to turn it over to you. Can't hear you, Council President.
Good morning. Good
There
morning.
you go.
Well, let us start with the tax assessor. Ed, you could start your presentation and then we'll ask questions along the way. Okay.
Yeah, good morning, Council President and members of the council. Also our Sean Gallagher, our city clerk. Members of the finance department, good morning. Yeah, this is the presentation of the tax assessor's budget for the year 2024. The Office of the Tax Assessor, of course, responsible for the disposal of the rateable or the total assessments we have for the year, which is used for the basis on how the tax rate is struck. The same thing what we have for last year, went up to $22.47, hoping that if we could put the tax rate on a stable level, hoping that it would be the same for this year in 2022. The budget that we are presenting right now, there isn't much difference between the 2023 budget and the 2024 budget. The last year's budget was at if you want to make a comparison, it's from 1.6 to 1.5 we have here on the page 2, including the number of staff that we have. We are very thankful with the administration that additional personnel were added into our inspection area, where we were always complaining that we don't have enough manpower covered with all the permits and the certificate of occupancy is being issued by our building office. If you take a look at the office budget we have in the total staff from 2023 and 2024, I think we are now at like 16 people in the office. The increase of the assessing aid we have additional 3 people added on into the inspection staff. On the table of organizations, we made a little bit changes pursuant to some of the recommendations we have with the administration. Take a look at page 4 of the presentation. We have some kind of a command responsibility depending on who the supervisor is covering some of the functions we have in the office. I think this is more of last year's we have it is more of like kind of a lateral functional chart rather than the ones we have for 2024. The flow of work basically has some kind of responsibility being taken by any supervisor. Of course, at the top of the chart, you have yours truly, and underneath me is the deputy tax assessor. Within that, we have some administrative staff as a support mechanism for the administration of the office. And on page, the ongoing initiatives we have, of course, we have the total ratables we have every time we do the report. There is a portion in there where you have the total ratables or taxable properties against the total exempts we have on the record. If you take a look on page 5, this is how the 2024 exempt properties are categorized depending on their use. We have from nonprofit organizations, from political subdivisions, and other exempt entities are covered in all here. Majority of if you take the left side of the pie, these are all the pilot. We consider them as exempt because technically they are not conventionally assessed. In other words, they are not the basis. Whatever number we have on the abated assessments, the assessments we have on these properties are not the basis on how the taxes are calculated. So that's why they are separated from the amount that we match or related to the tax rate we have for the year. For some of the administrative areas, we have the deeds that we get from the county register all year. If you take a look at, I think the market that we projected for this year would still be up, compared to last year. The market is still very active in terms of title transfers. You look at the history on page 6 where you have the total title changes within the city from 2022 all the way, 2021 all the way to the projected 2024. With the support staff that we have, the thing is we still have to manually key in all the new ownership on the system. Hopefully we should be able to incorporate what the county register has on the record where we could marry our two files. So all we need to do then would edit the information that the county register provides. Every year we set goals on what the office intends to accomplish for the year. As any other year, what happens is that there is always fear of losing the rateable, either because the condition on the market or the reduction in what you call your assessment ratio. Just for the benefit of everybody, the assessment ratio is basically a relationship between what a property sells for and how much it is assessed for. We were lucky for this year for 2024. What we're using, the ratio went up to I would say 87% from 83%. What does that mean is that there's a kind of 5% increase on how we assess properties. Before, a property is assessed at 83% of market value. Now we assess the same property at 87% of market value. In other words, the assessed value is raised compared to the last year's ratio that we use. The second goal that we have, we are fortunate that we were already gotten the tablets that we have been requested. These are the tablets used out in the field, so there wouldn't be any redundancy in terms of creating a report. So from the field, we would be able to capture the information and automatically be filed in our internal filing. And the only thing that we'd be looking for now is what type of software would be appropriate for, or what program would be appropriate for our office. Right now, when we are in this cycle, the ad assessment, of course, was done. We were able to generate like 7 million for the city, and I think around 5 million for the county. In other words, we have at least like around 12 million for the assessment. So that was done in October, beginning of October. Moving forward, what we do now is looking at those buildings, renovations, demolitions, and everything. If we would be able to pick up what you call a partial assessment. I know you're aware that we have a lot of buildings going up, a lot of scaffolding we divided the city between these inspectors and with the assessors, indicating that every block basically would have to be looked at and see if we can pick up additional assessment. Sometimes last year, there were some, there are stages of construction. Say for argument's sake, you have a building on 711 Montgomery. As of October 2021, there is a certain number of what the value is based on the percentage of completion. October 22, it's another number. Now, we will be assessing the same property as of October 1 of 2023. Right now, you see almost all the floors are done. Now, we would do calculation basically of the value that we have set up for 2023. What would be the value moving forward for 2024? There is no doubt that there would be an increase in assessments. Partial assessments that we pick up every year tend to create additional rateable, and most of the major added into the rateable are all from partial assessments that we do every year. Because of the number of inspectors we have right now, we have now the ability to cover all the different issues in terms of valuations. You have the permits. Now we're zeroing on these permits because most of them have started their renovations and everything. So if we pick up additional assessments on more than the pre-existing one, that would add into our total rateable. Every year, the area of tax appeal. We have lawyers basically every year. They send this out, what you call the bulk mail solicitation of appeals. Last year we have, I think the total appeals we have were around 2,000. What was it? Yeah, I don't know, 980. Now, not necessarily that all of this are getting reductions. By the same token, also we also initiate counter claims or cities appeal. Last year we had a few judgments basically adding the assessment based on the appeals or on the affirmative appeals we had. The appeals between, as I said, between the county and the state level consume a lot of time in the office for their defense. It is likened to doing an appraisal for us to justify what the existing assessments here before the county and before the tax court. Tax court, a lot of times you would need the aid of a certified appraiser because that's what the tax court requires. We almost have like 5,000 appeals for last year between the county and the state, 4,867 to be exact. anywhere, every year, what is set up basically, the main, have, other than maintaining your rateable, you tend to pick up additional. So what the objective we have for this year is if we could add 1.5 billion into the rateable now. Picking up 1.5 billion, I think that would, mitigate the tax rate we have, hoping that the increase on the amount that we need to raise is kind of limited in scope or in cover, other than well, I wouldn't term excessive increase in the amount that we would need to raise. On the page 8, you'd be looking at just the total amounts of permits and certificates of occupancies being issued by the city. Its permit issued is looked at depending on what type of work is done and what is the current assessment we have in the system. And a lot of times the permits issued may not totally reflect what is being done out there. We find based on our inspections where you have a permit like tank removal, the permit issued says tank removal, say 550-gallon tank removal. When you send out an inspector out there, not only that the tank was removed, but there are other renovations done with the property. The thought is that so neighbors want to complain about work being done on the property. What they do, they have this yellow sticker on the window. So they paste it on the window, knowing that their neighbor, you basically got the permit. So no complaints would be lodged against the city. We have also the dumpster permit. We need to be some kind of a vigilant in terms of determining what additional vehicle do people use. Every so often we discover that instead of a regular dumpster that they use, they have this garbage bags. At the end of the day, they basically just hold it in a truck or in a U-Haul truck. And then before you know it, there is a truckload of sheetrock. And basically once we pick that up, we make a notation that within after maybe 6 months, the duration as to when the renovation could be completed, we go back to the property. That's where we pick up an additional assessment or other assessment, which is added on every time we have an assessment pickups in October of every year. Coming to 2021, when you're talking about 4,000 to 5,000 permits, not only that there is an administrative work for that, because you have to take a look at what the record has and what additional information you would have or you'll be seeking out there in the field. That's why with the administrative support we have, I think we would have sufficient for this year to cover all what we intend to do for 2024. On page 9, this is basically the budget changes that we have. So if you take a look at the changes that we have, with total, it's a 5%, 5.74 delta for the change that we have. The introduced last year was $1.5 million, and we are at 1.65. There isn't much difference because, for one thing, it is only this year that we've been fully staffed. So I think whatever money left for the 2023 has been used on the new hiring we have for 2023. The the overtime request, a lot of the thing is, we have the notion is that we have the whole year to come up with a number or total assessment on a property. The truth of the matter is that there is a certain date as to when you can pick up an exact or close to a number, because every year we have what you call this assessment ratio. Right now, we have 86.55. That came out beginning of October. What does the state tell us is, Mr. Tax Assessor, now we have the ratio for 2024. So you use 86.55 when you assess properties for 2024. I know there was an urgent need to get an estimate for 2024. In 2024, some of the bigger numbers that we had were based on the 2023 ratio, which is at 83 rather than 87%. So we have to go back and review that. That's why there is this time element involved when you're doing the assessments. That's why we're asking this overtime, because this is done not on a regular time we have like 7.5 or 8 hours a day. But because of the time constraint that you have because the parameter you use are only out or promulgated around October, November, December. In other words, you got 3-month window to come up with the January value. So that's where most of the overtime money is being spent, because of that limited window that the state or that the assessing field provides. We can only work after all the data are all collected throughout the year, but the determination of the value, just how much you have to use or the ratio that you have to use, comes out only sometime in the first week or second week of October. So the budget basically being provided by the administration is 30. So we're looking at to stay at 75,000 that will be comfortably working with the 2024 filing of the tax list. The last but not the least, you were talking about uniforms. People that are out in the field, sometimes they begin to question, not only that they're looking for additional ID from our staff or from our inspectors. If they don't see the car, a lot of times they doubt whether, are these people legitimate in coming into my property? I think the uniform is a tool to introduce themselves that they work with the tax assessor's office. A lot of times, although you have the city car, it is always a practice not to park in front of the subject property that is to be inspected. Sometimes we leave at the corner and then we browse through all the properties within that block. So what speaks totally of the inspector is the uniform. That's why we're requesting this 5,000. I know the uniforms are not cheap. I think they're going for like 500, right? I think a simple uniform would cost like $500 per uniform. So if we have people out in the field, we have not only the inspections, not only that they are limited to the assessing aid, even the assessors or the assistant assessors go out there too. I know in the past year we were able to give the assistant assessor jacket to use when they do the inspections. I think that's my presentation. If there are any questions, we are happy to give answers.
Just again to touch on the overtime and the overtime request. Has there, I know for other departments, if they've needed to fill a gap in service, sometimes they will also look to contract out to see if that will maybe save the city a little bit of money, but still get the same goal in place. Have you run the numbers to see if that might be feasible here?
I know at one time the finance director brought it up, and we intend to budget, as a matter of fact, for 50,000 to outsource the inspection. But there are some legal impediments on that thing, which basically, if you have to satisfy it, it costs more basically rather than hiring people. And what we did then, an alternative, we asked the building department, some of their inspectors, to contribute some of the inspection some of the inspections we need. Unfortunately, to date, they are looking for whether the Tyler would be able to incorporate that form into its current program. We are still in that stage where nobody from our building division has moved to accomplish that goal, helping the tax assessor. In other words, outsourcing the inspection is kind of far-fetched because cost-wise, because what they're doing is they provide, okay, I'll inspect a property for $50 per line item. That is cost prohibitive. An inspector could do that less than the $50.
And was that information you learned by doing an RFP, or was that just sort of?
From a conversation with legitimate brokers.
Okay. But I think that, again, just my opinion here, it might be helpful to consider doing an RFP process for a certain amount to see what somebody would come back with, so you have something on paper, as opposed to, a more, I don't want to say anecdotal, but with a more anecdotal observation would just be my suggestion. And again, they could come back and say that it will cost $90,000 and clearly there's no savings there. But if they can come back and do it at a slightly lower rate, there would be an opportunity to save some money that way and still accomplish the same goal. Especially if the window for some of these assessments is very narrow, just by a couple of months.
We'll explore that by providing an RFP and see what the outcome would be in terms of per line item inspection.
Right. And again, I'm not saying one way or the other, we may find it may be more expensive, but I just feel like that would be a better exercise. The same way when we were without a forester, we contracted out. When we've been without certain positions, the city has contracted out, and we've been able to have similar service, but also save a little bit of money until somebody can be put in place. But also too, if there is a time of year, maybe it, instead of doing overtime, there's a way to even do like a part-time. And again, I don't know, this is not, you guys are the ones, this is your role, but that may also, be something to consider. And you may have already done that and the numbers may have not bored out, but that would just be my suggestion here.
All right, Ed, I'm just asking for the thousands of people that own homes in this city here, because I keep on getting a call after call after call. We look around, we see all this development, all these skyscrapers going up, all these new buildings, new houses, and yet our house taxes are going up. Why? What's a good answer? Where's the money going from all these giant buildings?
If you take a look at the amount needed to raise every year, considering from 2021 to 22, where the amount raised, I think, has been, from was that 600 million to 900 something. In other words, the increase in the amount that we need to raise was at 36%. Even though you raise the rateable at 5%, there is just not, it cannot be equate in terms of how much we have to raise for the year. In other words, it is not a 2% added into the budget that we have, but all areas of the revenue sharing went up. I think the budget could attest to that there's a difference between the prior year and the years that followed on the amount that we need to raise for taxation, in spite of the fact that our rateable went up.
Yeah, well, we look around, we see all this development, we see our taxes going up, and it just doesn't make any sense. Another question, Ed, I think it's 5355 Henry Street. They've been trying to,
That's the condominium, and then there was, the condominium, a subdivision as a result of, I think what happened there, as a matter of fact, I told, I'll be going out there and find out what is buildable. There's no question that in that particular island, the land is so valuable out there, especially when it is within the 2060 Jordan Square redevelopment area. There is a room for, there's a room for a reduction on that one. I'll make a determination for 2024. I'm just, after this, I'm going out to the site. I know a regular shaped lot and a typical house in the particular area. I am familiar with the one that you have. I know it says like 2 million. We'll address it just in case you have a conversation with the guy. Our office would be going out there and see if there is any adjustments to be made.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Ed.
Ed, go back over, I just want clarity on what Rich was asking. We see all these new buildings going up, all right? How do we assess them? Because I'm trying to get understanding, because you say based on what we got to raise every year, it seemed like that's how we assessing the new property that goes up. But what about if downtown, they building a building downtown and the value is much more? Just that assessment alone may cover the cost of what you saying that we can go up to. So it seemed like to me, we should be always going over. Like we should have more money. If I'm explaining this the best way I can.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
If I think I submitted to you on a partial basis what we picked up from the prior into the current rateable. I know we increased the rateable for the 2023. We haven't determined the 2024 yet, but all I can say is that the way a property is being assessed, you have, say, a skyline, say, for 400 apartments. Within that apartment, there's already an existing land value. So if you value this apartment, say, for argument's sake, you have 350 per unit, 350,000 per unit, that's the value you assign or as a basis of your sales study. So 30,000, multiply that by your number of units, and then you think that it's only done by 50%. So you take that 50%, and that's the only amount that you could add on into the existing value. Remember, the bulk of the value in partial construction is already on the land, because the land, we're assessing the land already between 80 to 110,000 per unit. Considering that amount, say run number 100,000 and you have 350, if that 350 is only 50%, so you're only talking about, what's that, 175. 175, you already have 100 on the land, so what you could pick up only would be additional 75,000.
So let me ask you something. With the land, okay, when you're starting from the land value, but as they build, I'm quite sure the land value must increase somewhere.
Yeah.
So how do we
That-
calculate that? How do we get that revenue? Because as they build, the value goes up.
Yeah, as I said, we gradually pick up, what is the status of the properties as of the preceding year, October 1. Right now, as I said, there are some partial assessments. The buildings that you see right now, they have assessment as of October 1, 2022. Then there is a raised amount for 2023. The same property will be bumped up for 2024, depending on the percentage of completion.
See,
Once we're closer to the filing of the books, we will provide you the additional assessments added on into these partial assessments.
to the partial assessment.
Yes, everything is partial when you talk about absent a certificate of occupancy.
Council President, too, I just want to clarify the budget impact, that the budgetary requirement for taxes doesn't impact how properties are assessed. So the total property valuation is 45 billion, right? So for the budget, obviously our fixed costs for the year, our spending plan, minus our other revenue items, courts, pilots, all of that difference needs to be made up by what's raised in taxes. So once that amount is determined to balance the budget, that is how the rate is determined. If we need less taxes to balance the budget, there'll be a tax decrease. If there's a requirement for additional revenue to balance the budget, there will likely be a tax increase depending on what the valuation changes and things like that. So there are instances in prior budget years where we've raised more in taxes to support the municipal budget, but the tax levy remained flat because of the increase in valuation. So I just want to clarify that we don't dictate how properties are assessed,
No,
and the manner in which they're assessed and the added value only helps us balance the budget.
this department dictates how we assess.
So the assessor's office
Right.
gives us that information on
Right.
January 10th. We'll have a total confirmation on what that is, and he's expecting an increase. So naturally, that provides extra revenue to the city before any change in the rate.
Just wanted to get clarity on that because I know with all the building that's going up, and I'm quite sure the council people get a lot of calls because, you know, our taxes have went up at least twice since we came out of COVID, and it is really hurting the public in such a way that we have to start looking at how we are capturing really the assessment of especially this new property that's going up. And as I look throughout the city, the building is really in pretty much prominent areas. It's not like a lot of building is going on in areas that are, you know, having challenges. So the property value, the land value of where a lot of the building is going up, we should seem like reaping some of the benefits from it. That's what I'm trying to find out, because we can't constantly keep hitting the homeowners, the taxpayers, you know, because that's who really gets the bulk of this hit is the homeowners, like people who own 1 and 2 family homes. You know, their taxes are going up sky high. And I see, and their question is, we see all this building going up. How is that helping us in any way? So that's why I'm asking him, based on all the new building, how we're capturing or how we are assessing all of these other new properties. That's it. We have to see how that's being done. And not only that, then I want to know about our tax appeals.
Yeah.
We have so many, and how many is being overturned, and why are we allowing so many to be overturned? Are we doing all that we're supposed to do? These are the questions that we have to get to now, because it's really just hurting the taxpayers.
Okay, can I just add something? So if you track the prior year and ratables, so even though the pandemic, we've been increasing the ratables. So it's not that we decreased the ratables in any way. So we can give you the prior history, so you can see how we've been increasing the values in the yearly basis. Just to address your prior question regarding the partial assessments, that's what we do every year in October 1st. So any building that have a land value, every year, if they take in 2 years to build that property, whatever is in that property, we keep adding every year. So it knows that we're missing any revenue. So if it's 20% of improvement value, we added a year. If the following year is 40, we added 40% to the
Let
property.
me ask you something though, Laura. Who determines the value of this land?
Well, we do.
Ah,
That's, again, it's based on the
That's right.
sales, based on the site plan approvals, based on the market. So it has to be some kind of resources to be able to come up with the prices. We cannot just pick a number and say, let me just
right.
pick this
And
number.
that's
Just-
what some of the taxpayers ask the question, because
But any
I'm
tax,
having building downtown and the property value downtown, because that's our Gold Coast. And the building is going up. And if I get an assessment on a land that's 34,000, they telling me there's a problem. I don't care. I mean, the value downtown is more than 34,000 on the land. So if that is happening, that's why, you know, I'm having this conversation, because I've seen it.
yeah, again, we review the files before we assess a property, and we need to come up with facts to be able to assess a property based on the price per unit. We cannot just pick a number, because when they file an appeal, you need to come up with how you arrive with a number, comparable sales. What is the sales after or before the site plan approvals? If you're referring to the land that we assess in 30,000 by like here in downtown, is because it's a park, it's a street. So it's common sense. We cannot just increase the value for a street or a park, because when they file an appeal, later on, we have to give it back the money. So it doesn't make sense. If we know that it's a park over there,
So if we live near a park, that means our land is devalued?
well, of course, based on the use of that, if it's in a street that we know that is going to be in a street based on the size, we need to review the site plans approval. So you cannot just value a property without having the facts. So if you give us a location, we can tell you how we arrive with the value. Any property that we assess is, again, based on the compatible sales or data that we have available.
That's news to me. Like if we live near a park, the property value is devalued. That's new.
Yeah,
And as much as we fighting for open space, that's why I would have to really look into that again. Go ahead.
I know there was an issue at one time, as a matter of fact, that was before the council,
Uh-huh.
that certain property or certain parcel were assessed at 13,000,
Uh-huh.
33,000 on the other. And then when that was brought to me, I looked at it. Well, the 13,000 is a proposed road on the site plan approval. In other words, there's no value in there, but nevertheless, you have 13,000 in the assessed value because it is not exempt. I have to put in there a minimal value. And there is another one that was raised. I mean, it's Marion Boulevard. How come you only have this assessment? It's a 33,000. When I look at the subdivision, based on the site plan approval, that's a planter lot, you know? In other words, surveyor would call that as a damaged property. Nothing could be built in there. There is no site plan intended for that. It's a mere planter parcel. Guess you have building here, you have the building here, and then you have either a proposed road in here and a planter here. What number you could put in there? Remember, valuation, although valuation is an opinion, but such opinion is anchored on the market data that you have. We cannot just be because, okay, arbitrarily I get a number. If I don't have any basis on that, then it would always be, negated by the court when they file an appeal. We do sales analysis to come up with a certain value on just like the new construction you're talking about, or the site plan approvals. We have sales of properties with the site plan approvals. With the site plan approvals that were sold, how much per unit then is the value with the one with the approval? The one on mere vacant land, we use that also. So if you have a property that just came into the tax roll, we value that accordingly on the basis of sales analysis. Property that were sold with the site plan approvals, properties that were sold without the site plan approvals. So our opinion is not arbitrarily. It is anchored opinion based on the market out there. So a lot of times I know they question the assessments and everything. So I said there is a basis for the numbers that we put in there. Sometimes sometimes when your opinion has a range of value that they call. So it could be 10%, or I mean, could be from 2 to 5% range, because there is no identical property in terms of property values other than you have a brand new, either a condominium or set of properties where the developer basically based on the cost of construction, and then he has a margin of profit. Everything could be sold based on the square footage, the same. But when you're talking about pre-existing property, renovated, or different areas, because each property may be developed differently in terms of the cost, because there are some, the Bayonne box they call, sometimes depending on what is used on their kitchen for mica or marble floor. That's why every time we have this, we request the contractor or the contractor's contract with the owner to determine what was the cost of input on that property. That's why a lot of times the assessments are not the same, because what is put in there is entirely different from other properties. The same if you take a look at sales. Sales out there are not kind of uniform. What you do on the basis of analysis, say you average the closest sales you have, and that's basically how you come up with the valuation of properties. It is not mere an opinion, but it is opinion based on the extracted market.
Okay, based on your opinion in the market, how many new development went up that helped us increase when it came to the revenue?
I don't have the exact
Okay.
number. Basically, one thing that we have for this coming, as a matter of fact, they are still before the tax court. we filed an affirmative or reversed appeal. We are counting like 400. There were judgments made before that we made, additional monies in terms of the judgments we've gotten from the court. Like, for instance, you have properties that have changed in terms of value because the movement of the market went in this particular area. We look at those and see whether they are undervalued, and then that's why we file what you call the affirmative appeals. And I'll see if I could get some dollar amount on this reversed appeals that we have. And also, as I said, moving forward, what additional pickups we have on different neighborhood, just the same thing, the list that I gave you before.
Okay. Let me ask you something. When it comes to the appeals and we have to go to court, do you have a team that go with you, or you have to just go by yourself, or just 2 staff members?
Normally, every so often, we have appraisers on board. We also have 2 appraisers that we outsourced because the tax code requires them. Every so often, we meet in the office. If there are any kind of appeals that basically would need my attention, it's part of our every so often meeting with the calendar we have at the court. I know we just distributed something at a particular area. Okay, Mr. Assessor, this is basically the land value we will use on this particular area. That is based on the sales analysis. On a brand new construction or on renovation, this is the value used in terms of defending an appeal. We have, say, for instance, 631 per square foot, say, in the downtown area. We have 380 on certain areas. In other words, we extract on different sales that we have. We did some sales analysis. What is the turnover value when a property is sold? What you do is you have a sale of a property, say a 2-family unit, it is not renovated, and then you have another sale of property which is renovated. So the renovated, how much is in the square foot value? Compare that against the non-renovated property. Maybe there is a difference between those 2 sales, like $85 per square foot difference. If you renovate a property, what would be the added value based on the sales that you have extracted? It could be between $85 per square foot to $135 per square foot. We use that barometer in determining what would be the new value if you got a certificate of occupancy being renovated, or a property that is brand new based on the sales data you have.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could I just ask a quick question? How much did we spend in lawyers to fight the Kennedy dances?
I don't have a contract with the 2 outsourced attorneys we have, but most our attorneys right now dealing with, especially with the county tax board, are in-house. We have two attorneys basically that help us in-house. And there's the 3rd one, depending on the load of the cases. Some, especially the older ones, the remaining tax court cases, we still have the 2. I am not privy to the contract they have with the law department, but they are only finishing the old cases, and then ultimately everything would be turned over in-house.
Let me just ask this question too. Now, your department does the assessment of the property, right?
That's correct.
Now, if there's a tax appeal, somebody do a tax appeal that they don't agree with the assessment or whatever, right? Is your department that makes the decision to reverse it?
Not reverse it. We
I mean, if whatever
we
the
are
agreement-
basically to reduce it.
To reduce it. So
Based on
your department
justification.
Does everything. That's what I just want to be clear on.
Yeah, we are the one, the authority
does
to
both.
reduce or increase it.
That might be a problem. The only reason why I say that, because see, if you assessing a property, and I can see why we probably lose a lot of tax appeals, because if I'm the department that's assessing all the property, and then, let's say a person doesn't agree with it, then they have to come back to that same department okay? And it's that same department that says, okay, now we're gonna reverse what we assessed because we felt like there was something wrong that we did.
There are certain instances.
Does that happen?
No, I mean, if you look in this, there are conflict of interest on you decide the
Is it?
assessed value, at the same time, you're the one responsible for reducing it. Now, there are
One reason why I
certain,
made was how many tax appeals are over?
well, as I said, we're talking about like 5,000
Thousand.
appeals.
Right, that's what I'm
Both,
saying.
both
Do
on
we
the
start
county.
outsourcing it? I don't know. It's becoming,
Well, ultimately, the tax assessor determines it, even though you have
right.
outside counsel.
Mhm.
The outside counsel would still have, has to refer it, even though you have an outside expert.
Right,
The bottom line is, as a statutory officer, the assessor
right,
would make the determination whether to agree or disagree.
right.
Now, filing an appeal is not just a matter of filing an appeal, reducing it, or looking for reduction. We also look at the assessed value, and if there is a reason for us to file a counterclaim, we also do that. In terms of the valuation, whether you put in there and then you have to reduce it. Now, there are certain parameters or barometers you use, like for instance, the first time property owner files an appeal. The number that he has is 100% of market value. 100% of market value, we have those in 2018, 19, something like that. Now, last year, the assessment ratio is 82.91. So 100% of market value, now it should be assessed at 82.91 only. So rather than 100,000 assessed value, it should be reduced to 83. Those are some of the conditions you need to, that plays a role in terms of reducing. It's just a matter of, as I said, well, yeah, you got the value, but the thing is the ratio, the state promulgated ratio says, hey, Mr. Assessor, yeah, you got the value at 100%, but this should only be assessed at a fraction of that value. That's why you have a continuance in terms of appeals from the property owner. And what is also incentivizing the property owner is free. There's no cost for them if they file an appeal through the lawyer.
Oh, yes, right.
Same thing, the lawyer, they have their own analysis office also. They take a look at especially the sales. If the sale is lower than what it is assessed right now, we could bet our bottom dollar that they would file an appeal. Because right there and there, the attorney would calculate how much savings they would have. Who wouldn't be attracted to that? Hey, Mr. Taxpayer, if you file an appeal on your behalf, you'll be saving $3,000 a year. That's why we have this number. There are attorneys. The only job basically they have is filing an appeal on the 565 municipalities in the state.
So this is kind of more of a follow-up question to my previous one. And looking through your goals, I see one of them is to increase the ratables by 1.5 billion, which would be great for the city. But I don't see outside of the ask for overtime and increase in staffing. And so I guess I'm a little concerned that while the goals are great, internally, you all might not be set up for success there. For a city of our size, for a tax base of our size, for the tax revenue of our size, are we in line with other municipalities, either regionally or nationally? And this is something I would really like to know, because I want to make sure that you guys have the support that you need to be able to accomplish the goals. And if allocating additional funding outside of some overtime makes more sense, I think that we should consider that. But if you don't have that answer right now, if you could just get me that answer, that would be great.
Well, I think the only term that would be used, we're basically optimizing whatever resources that we have. Right now, the staffing we have, it is not the number of staff that you have. It's just that the limited time that you have in order to come up with a number. I mean, throughout the year, everybody could be summoned to do inspections or data collection. It is when the data collection comes to the office then you only have a limited window to do the evaluations. That's where the assessors come in. Of course, any help would be welcome.
That makes sense to me. I understand how you guys have different windows to make your own deadlines internally, right? But really understanding that, you know, if you did not have adequate staffing last year and you weren't able to make some of these goals last year, it doesn't make sense that using the same plan for this year is going to bear any real major different results. And this is not to knock anybody, but again, this is just to make sure that you all are set up for success here.
Well, as I said, part of our wish list, basically, most of them were given to us this year. Part of 2023, which basically would be functioning for 2024.
But again, too, I think at least as a council person, it would be helpful for me to understand, like, a city similar to our size and our tax base, like what other tax assessors' offices look like. Again, because if you guys aren't getting what you need, that's not helpful for anybody, and we're squandering money.
Just to clarify, we actually accomplished what we say last year
Yeah.
in the ratables. So with less staff. So this time we have 3 more inspectors. We have 5 assessors. So it is 5, the overtime is between inspectors and assessors. Like Ed explained it, when we have an appeal, just for one property, we need to come up with 3 compatible sales to support the case. So it is time consuming. So that's why also the overtime is extended to the assessor, especially when we do have appeals and also the added assessment and also the tax list was coming in 2024. We are the biggest city in the bigger city with line items in the state of New Jersey. Yes, we are not compared with Newark. Newark have more than 20 staff members over there. But the goal is to little by little keep adding staff to our department. So for now, we are very happy that the administration gave us 3 inspectors this year. So based on that, we're going to see how we can actually apply technology to be able to kind of, if we have the right staff with the technology, maybe we can make this work. If we need more staff, then we want to bring to the administration.
I guess finally, from like an operations perspective, like how often do you guys review your processes and take a look? Like, is that something you do annually? Is it something you do quarterly? Is it something you do every couple of years to make sure that you guys are being as efficient as possible? Because again, if there are ways that we can help you, we would like to do that.
Yeah, you mean I'm sorry, I didn't, you mean internally? We meet with our staff monthly to see how we accomplish, and also we put goals to do the month. Like, let's say for this year in 2024 that we had to work for the tax list 24, we actually come up with areas for the inspectors to go and check the properties that are under construction. So same thing happened when the added season comes. We just distribute it to the assessors, inspectors, so we come up with goals for the staff to be able to accomplish whatever we need to do. Again, we did it before, which with a limited staff, and now we have extra help. So hopefully that's going to make us department more successful than we were in the prior years. Again, the rate has been increasing in the prior years, so hopefully we keep in the same track in the years coming.
And Laura, I just want to remind you that untraditional to other budget years, we're starting early this year. So I think what the council is trying to say is they want clarity on an operations plan and a staffing plan to achieve your goals. I think they're satisfied with what you've been able to achieve. I think what they want is a more comprehensive plan so that they understand the requests that they're getting from the constituents. And so I think in years prior, in the last 2.5 years that I've been working with you guys, you guys hadn't had full adequate staffing levels. You have needed things. And so now we've met some of those milestones. So I think what they're asking you is to increase a different comprehensive plan to your budget to achieve your goals, because they want you to succeed. So the fact that we're doing the budget in this year or next year, we have a little bit of time before we introduce our budget to think about the priorities that this year's budget is going to be directed towards. So just wanted to give you that, because oftentimes in other prior years, we've been doing the budget hearings and then getting things in place. We're doing budget hearings now so that we can develop, at least from the finances perspective, with the mayor, BA and council, a comprehensive plan on what we can afford as we develop our annual financial statements and our priorities and so on and so forth.
Thank you, Director. That's
Right.
to the point that I was getting at. We're starting this early to ensure that departments are set up for success. And some of that is taking like a real hard look at operations plans and see where we can, what's working really well, what's doing, like what's better. I think it's great that you accomplished almost all of your goals from last year and you have some really good goals for this year. We just, take the time, let us know what it looks like for you guys. That's what it is. Like just seeing an org chart and seeing goals is a little bit of a disconnect for us, I guess, is also part of it. So understanding the operations behind it, since, I am not a numbers person, I will never claim to be a numbers person, would be helpful in us understanding this a little bit more deeply.
We appreciate very much the sympathy that this group has in terms of our budgeting process. I think the assessor is not only limited to have their own budget. We are also looking at if the finance basically would add more, and then we would see that on the adopted budget. Then there's no question that we'll be able to utilize the additional resource available.
All right, may I have a motion to adjourn at 12:06 PM? Motion made by Councilperson Bajano. May I have a second? Second by Councilperson Prinzary. All in favor of the motion to adjourn at 12:06 PM by acclamation, please say aye. We finish with the tax assessor's office at 12:06 PM. Thank you so much. And we are going to go right into Public Works, or we're going to take a 2-minute break. Okay. We're going to take a 2-minute break and we'll come back with the Department of Public Works. Thank you very much. Hey, everyone, we're about to get started. If we can find our seats, silence our cell phones, greatly appreciate it. All the doors are closed. All right, good afternoon. We are on the record. Today is Wednesday, the 29th day of November, 2023. This is a budget hearing for the Department of Public Works with the Jersey City Municipal Council. We had a scheduled 12 p.m. start. The clock on my cell phone is showing 12:17 p.m. May we have a roll call for the commencement of this hearing? And I see Councilperson Baggiano and Council President Waterman. So we have two council members present at 12:17 p.m. In addition, at its time of its preparation, the notice of this meeting was similarly disseminated on Thursday, November 16th, 2023 at 11:50 a.m. And a reminder was sent out on Wednesday, November 22nd, 2023 at 7:10 p.m. to the mayor, the municipal council, business administrator, corporation council, and the local newspapers. So I can certify as their total compliance with the Sunshine Law. Council President, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, President Waterman, Councilor Bogiano, everybody else in the room. Thank you for this opportunity to appear today before you to discuss our proposed budget. I have to say the gentleman sitting to my right is probably one of the best budget guys we have in the city, and I appreciate it.
Director, I'm sorry. If you can just bring the mic a little closer, bring it down.
I want to compliment my guy sitting to my right here, Dan. He's my fiscal guy. He's one of the best budget guys in the city, and I want to thank you publicly, Dan, for all your assistance with this. The Department of Public Works obviously is consisting of the Director's Office, Administrative Services, Automotive Maintenance, Buildings and Streets, Sanitation, Forestry, Recycling, and Enforcement. Obviously, our goal is to deliver the highest level of service possible to our citizens and our roughly 283 employees without any trepidation do that on a daily basis. I would prefer, I guess if you want, we can go through the different divisions and we can explain, what we're dealing with here. Obviously, our automotive division, and let me just preface this conversation with, we've had turnovers throughout Public Works regarding, employees that were either left the job for their own personal volition, or retired, and or were brought up for charges and were dismissed. So we're dealing with some shortages in personnel, which does impact our services. And for instance, I use buildings and streets, and we converse pretty much daily with the council on different issues, and automotive being, and of course sanitation. But those two, we've had a significant amount of employees that have left, and we're diligently trying to get people back into the fold. One of the problems we have is I think the salary disparity has still not been fully addressed. Well, we have a gentleman I wanted to promote to he's a mechanics assistant, brought him up to a mechanics helper, I brought him up to a mechanic, and the salary that we would be bringing him to was the same salary that we would start somebody with. And this is somebody that's been on board for a good number of years. So I hope that we can move forward on that and, get that addressed, because it really does impact, and we've lost very, very good people, especially in the automotive side, good mechanics, basically because of salaries. And we have one fellow who pretty much oversees our fire apparatus. And he's a perfect example of what I mean about good hard worker. He's one of his assistants down there got injured last year, and he's been picking up daily, to ensure that our fire apparatus is totally available on the street. And there again, there's been issues where he'll come to you and say, look, we have to figure something out about additional help. And we were able to get him a little raise, but these are things that have to be addressed. Two issues I'd like to point out, and I mentioned this at last year's budget hearing. As a result of legislation that was passed back in the 80s, a good portion of our budget, to be exact, it's about $13 million, goes towards the solid waste management. And this is something I think in this day and age, we should really kind of take a look at and see if there's any alternatives as opposed. The legislation has us using the Hudson County Improvement Authority, which is the designee by the state. And it's a lot of money. And, that's $13 million. That's roughly almost a third of my budget. If there are some ways we could better negotiate a rate or something, or maybe even have the legislator take a look at the plan itself and give the cities, you know, a little bit of a leeway as far as payment. I think that would greatly benefit us. The other thing that I asked for last year, and I think it would be a good thing to move towards. We get calls, obviously, from the members, you know, pretty much daily regarding sanitation issues. Several years ago, the inspectors that we had assigned to sanitation were absorbed into the task force. And unfortunately, it leaves us at a bit of a disadvantage where if we had, say, for instance, a supervisor and 4 inspectors assigned specifically to sanitation, as we get those calls for service, we can get them out there. Plus, it's revenue producing for the city. So I would respectfully request that we take a look at that again and see if, you know, that's something we could actually do. Goals and objectives, very simple. We want to provide the level of service that the department is known for to our residents. We want to improve the services if we can, and that takes 2 things. Number one, it takes the budget that, you know, will be presented to you for review. And the other thing is personnel, you know, and I think when we get back to our top number, personnel wise, that'll only enhance our capabilities to, you know, further provide services to the city. You know, when I took over down there 2 years ago, you know, coming from my background on the police side, I was very impressed with the level of service that these folks work down there. They're hardworking, majority of which are residents of the city. And every day I'm impressed by the amount of work they do. Fortunately, last year we had no snow, you know, but we are prepared to deal with snow operations. And even with that, our guys and women are out there 24/7 for the most part dealing with this. And we do a good job, I would say, to get the city where it has to be. But so the one thing I would say that I appreciate all the support that the council gives us, you know, because we've through your support, we've been able to purchase a tremendous amount of new equipment, you know, relative to snow operations. And that really goes a long way. And I would hope that there again, I know budgets are tight, you know, throughout not only Jersey City, but throughout the whole country, that you take all of this into consideration when reviewing our budget for approval.
So Director, your biggest concern really is your staffing. The biggest concern is the staffing, your
Correct.
staff.
Correct, President. Yeah, it's an issue where I think it's a lot of it goes back to what I said earlier, is the salary disparity. You have folks that, you know, when they merged the JCIA, they were at a higher
Right.
to begin with, and they were brought in pretty much similar titles and things of that nature. And it is a challenge. I mean, I recently lost one of my top mechanics down there. Simply because, you know, it was a salary issue. You know, he was pretty much locked into where he was contractually. And our budget, you know, let's take a look at it. You know, a good portion of our budget is based on the union contracts,
Yeah.
you know, for our employees, 245, 246, 641 and supervisors. So I think that between the salaries and the solid waste management, that's about a good 70% of our budget. But I think that we should also take a look at some point, and there are folks that, you know, maybe at some point you'd like to give them a little merit raise or something like that. Unfortunately, now the way the system is designed, the only way we can do it is to promote them. Many times people don't want to be, they want to stay in that
Right.
position. And, you know, a couple of bucks here and there does help. I mean, it is a motivator. But to get to your point, Council President, our employees are positions that have not been filled is impacting our ability to perform. One of the things that we did when I took over down there, I sat with Dan and the division directors. We were doing close to $3 million in outsourcing contracts. And one of the ways that we were able to not eliminate it 100%, because obviously there is some outside contracts that are necessary for large scale repairs, body work, things like that. But we cut down the day-to-day farming out mechanical work by almost $2 million. But more and more as we lose employees, whether it be to retirement or separation or whatever, it's harder to do that. So what we don't spend in the outsourcing, we may have to spend in overtime.
Danny, let me ask you something, because you're their finance person. I don't know, because I know it's the staffing. That's the challenge we have with DPW. So we got to start figuring out a way how we can pretty much staff them appropriate, because they do a lot of work. That division is always out there one way or another. You know, these people work every day. So now, based on civil service, okay, if we increase, we have to change their titles. Are you familiar with that? I'm just, or Kyle, maybe one of y'all are familiar with that.
Yes, so the stance that the administration takes, and I assume at the advisement of Human Resources, is that merit increases for union employees are not something that is permissible unless negotiated.
Oh,
So I don't know the specifics of what's required in those conversations with the
right,
union,
right.
but we don't typically plan for merit increases for union employees. What we do plan for on rare occasion is promotion to vacant positions with higher titles, and that would that would merit a raise in salary. But again, I think the issue here is the range for the titles that currently
Correct.
exist. And that's not something that the finance department is currently undertaking. We budget in,
Yeah.
in accordance with the current bargaining agreements,
Mhm.
and the steps that are included there.
I know it's challenging. I know it's challenging.
Something, Joyce, that we could potentially look at is a performance type. system,
Performance side.
where our employees, if they go and above and beyond, right? And I mentioned our fellow in the fire service field. Without trepidation, he'll respond out in the road, fires overnight. I see him there
Yeah,
making sure the apparatus is running. He's already in a supervisory capacity, but I think we should have some type of a leeway
correct.
that if a person goes above and beyond, that you can give them some type of merit raise. It does work. And then you have folks that really, they enjoy doing what they do. They don't want to be supervisors. All they're looking for is some recognition and a little bump here and there, so it's, and to Kyle's point, I know a lot of this, obviously, we were all bound by contracts. So
Yeah.
it's something moving forward in the contract negotiation process that maybe we want to consider.
I guess that's a conversation we probably have to have with HR and administration, to see how we can really, encourage people to go to the next level, because some people do enjoy their job. They do. So I just think that is a conversation, and I think this is DPW's problem. This is where they get stuck at. And this is how we see now that they're losing a lot of workers. And DPW, you can't afford to lose many, because they're the everyday, department that's out there with the residents, with the public, building and streets, waste management, all of that is a daily function of the city. And so I guess that's something we really going to have some type of conversation about, for 2024. How can we help them reach their goal? I think that's a new conversation we should have.
Yep.
Especially, like I say, with administration. I know you guys, is the money people, but y'all have great ideas too.
Yeah, so we started the process for the compensation study for management employees. Obviously, we're not restricted or bound to any bargaining agreements, but there has been some discussion about including professional licensed employees that fall within unions, like architects, engineers, and if equipment operators and people within DPW require licenses, maybe that's something we can include. Again, ultimately, would have to be presented to the union.
We have some real talented folks that work for DPW, and I can just to mention one story. Earlier in the year, we had a fire on Stegman Street, up next to a church right off Kennedy Boulevard, and necessitated, the decision was made by the building official that the building had to come down due to imminent hazard. And we did that demolition in-house. We have some real talented people there that are able to do that, and I can cite daily activity of the employees down there. Let's face it, the first people most of our citizens interact with is public safety and public works.
Yeah.
So having the amount of folks out there in place, God forbid, if we have a major event, and, our folks are engaged in a lot of things. I have people with tonight's preparedness plan for barricades and things of that nature to make sure that we have, devices in place should we have to have crowd control and things like that. I just left an earlier meeting regarding the upcoming citywide marathon plan for next year. That's something else that, that's a $25,000 bill in overtime that I think really most of that should be absorbed by the folks planning these events. I guess that's something that would have to be changed by resolution, but we're called into play for not only public works activity, but a lot of it security related. When we're doing road closures, especially for a marathon or something like that, we have to use our big trucks to block streets. That requires, our operators. Most of this stuff occurs on weekends, so you're dealing with a premium rate. So, moving forward, I think that's something we should look at for certain types of events. They should have to pay additional funding.
I apologize for coming in late. I'll review all the materials, and if I have specific questions,
Thank
I'll
you.
get back to you.
Thank you.
So just for the record, I'm sorry, Councilperson Prinzary arrived at 12:25 PM and Councilperson Saleh arrived at 12:28 PM. So we have 4 council members present.
And this may have been covered in your presentation, but to sort of, I think, piggyback off what Council President is saying, the work that Public Works does and what you pointed out is like one of our most front facing. And knowing that there is adequate staffing to really address all of the needs of residents in the city, because we all get the calls
Mhm.
about, the myriad issues and how come we're not like Union City, and, why is the city the way it is? I think that if we can better support Public Works, I think that that's a win for everybody.
The other thing we really take a look at, especially during, and I know Councilwoman Prinzary, we deal with this quite a lot, especially in the commercial areas. I would like to explore the possibility of the seasonals again, to put out the hand gangs, so to speak, and especially in the commercial areas. Because I mean, we get Councilman Saleh, we get, calls daily on Central Avenue, West Side Avenue. I mean, having the additional bodies would really, really benefit it, during either the winter months when we're dealing with snow, or moving that to the summer, when we have more activity out in the streets. I get calls every day over sanitation, I mean, we do the best we can with what we have, but to your point, I think having full staffing is critical in making sure we're able to provide the services that are necessary.
Right, and in my experience, that kind of investment also, like when the residents see the crews out on the street, making sure our streets are clean, it's also an extra set of eyes on the street, so it feels like the streets are a little bit more safe.
Yep.
Right?
It's
And
kind
it
of
also-
like the broken window theory.
Exactly. And then it also, they can work better hand in hand with businesses as well. Also as an education component to remind them, hey, we're here to assist you, but you got to clean up your front business too, right? So I think that would be, that in my opinion, would be money well spent.
And so, just based on the conversation that we have here, you would need inspectors. You can do your job better with the inspectors. I know we moved them out of DPW and gave them to quality of life.
They're with the mayor's task force, but when we had the sanitation inspectors, they worked primarily for Director Dublin and Director Lamparelli. And I can cite an instance if, for instance, and I'll use you, Councilman Saleh, if you called and said, look, we have a lot that has to be cleaned. Previously, what we would do is send the inspectors out, write a notice of violation, and handle that immediately. Now it's another level what we have to do. So we have to notify, the quality of life folks. They have to schedule an inspection. So instead of being able to respond to that immediately, there's a delay. Plus the revenue end. I mean, when the people were down there writing the summonses, they were making a lot of money for the city. I mean, let's face it, it's The way to wake people up when they're in violation is to hit them in the pocketbook, and a lot of these absentee landlords, a lot of these absentee property owners, they really don't give the due diligence to the property that we would require and respect. What I would say, have the ability of an inspector, and I'm not looking, if I got 4 sanitation inspectors and a good supervisor, we have a plan to immediately put them out in the road and hope we can address a lot of the issues that, you deal with daily from your constituents.
Anything else that you feel like is priority for your division?
What I want to do is just maintain the level of service that we are doing. And obviously, any cuts to the budget would impact that service.
Okay.
There again, we're, like many of the other departments, we're pretty much a good portion of our budget is based on the contractual obligations of our workers. There again, that waste management thing is something I really think we should take a look at and see if we do have alternatives, or maybe even renegotiate the law where, as opposed to paying. And this, mind you, this was back in 1982 or 1983, I think it was. Yeah. And, that's $13 million. That's a lot of money.
So
Maybe there's another way we could look at that, whether it goes private or something like that.
I'm sorry, I missed that part of the conversation because I've worked.
Yeah, well, I mentioned this last year, Councilwoman. We have an obligation. It's approximately $13 million that we pay to the Hudson County Improvement Authority,
Mhm.
and that's to manage our solid waste. And that was passed on the legislation back in 1982, but there's never been a second look at that. And I mean, in this day and age, there may be alternatives where we could, go in a different direction or renegotiate the price or something like that, because it's a good portion of my budget.
Greg, why don't you put that in writing to all the council people and we'll see if we can get something done.
Yeah, we'll do.
State legislators also, we'll speak to them also. Okay, it's a good. We need all we can get. Is there anything else?
Yeah, Greg, I just want to say one thing. I call you continuously. You take care of everything I request and you're doing a great job.
Thank
And so is your department. And I thank you for it.
Agreed. You
Thank
have been very, very responsive to everything that I've ever asked for. So I really appreciate that. And the residents of Ward do appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it, but like I said, I'll try to concentrate on your inspectors, because that is, a source of revenue that your department is missing. And, the more inspectors we have, to be perfectly honest, throughout the city, the better off we are, because the city is growing so much. And,
Enforcement is the key. And
I know, I agree. Enforcement is the key, and I think that's where we're missing an opportunity as a city when it comes to enforcement. So I think this year, going into the budget, we should be really strengthening our enforcement divisions wherever they may lie in the city area of enforcement, because that brings revenue into the city. Not only that, it keeps people kind of control, because when you don't have enforcement, people get out of control.
yes.
And so now we need to really focus on enforcement to keep people, to bring people back in line, because there's too much development. It's too much happening here, and we're just missing so much revenue. But that's the area I'm concerned about, is the enforcement.
Revenue side, Dan had just mentioned the average that they were bringing in when they were assigned down there was roughly $50,000 a month in fines.
Right,
A lot of money.
right. That's a lot. And we grow, we want to make sure we can keep it under control. So many things. Okay. Anyone else? Good. Go ahead, guys.
I just wanted to bring up a point because I did meet with Chanel yesterday about the compensation study. So we're hoping to put it on for the next council meeting now in December.
Okay.
But if there are anything specific that you guys wanted to see, considering we are doing the budget hearings,
Yeah.
as Kyle said, we structured this first via management because of our collective bargaining agreements. But what we're uncovering is that historically the city under human resources have had actual positions in unions in 246 or JCSA that may be considered in today's environment as management. So we are looking at some of those items. And then I just also wanted to clarify that recently in the changes, Danny Cylindra was promoted to be the director of OMB. And this is Andres, who is the new fiscal officer for DPW. So he's shadowing Danny and working with the department so that you guys are aware of the changes.
Welcome. Sean.
Okay, so may I have a motion to adjourn at 12:42 PM? Motion made by Councilperson Bajano. May I have a second? Second by Council President Waterman. It was hard to hear you. I'm sorry. On the motion to adjourn at 12:42 PM, all council members present by acclamation, please say aye.
Aye.
We are out of here at 12:42 PM. Thank you so much, everybody present and everyone watching at home. And remember, teamwork makes the dream work. Have a great rest of the day.